Welcome to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. And this is part two, but I'm super excited. Part two is going to be better than part one. You're going to really see a person that's serving, that came out of a tragic event in his life, and he's helping others. And he's so passionate about it. I want to welcome to the show, Jeff. And I guess I can call you Griff.
Absolutely.
Griff it is.
I'll
Griff,
take it.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
Well, we were talking before about mountains, and I love the analogy. Let's jump into that.
Yeah, mountains. You know, I moved from Salt Lake to North Ogden, and if you have ever seen a Paramount picture movie, the owner of Paramount is from Ogden. That mountains logo is not Everest or K12 or whatever they've changed it to right now. It was Mount Ben Lomond. He used the mountain behind his house, his backdrop, as the logo to create his films, to create his movies, to give people some entertainment and to dream. And anyway, so I moved to North Ogden, and what your listeners may, if they're just stumbling across this one or watching right now, they may not know that I'm in a wheelchair. Right now I'm sitting in a chair, my wheelchair is off to the side. I go around and speak all over the world. And as I come rolling out on stage on my wheelchair, I address the elephant in the room, going from 6'1" to 4'7". And the other elephant is how good looking I am.
You are.
It never gets old. But and if people don't recognize the elephant, they have more problems than I do. But I can't hide it. I'm paralyzed from the waist down, and the experts gave me the 0% chance of ever standing, walking, or moving my legs. It was a life sentence. And to this day, I can honestly say that I'm grateful to be in a wheelchair. Dissatisfied, but grateful. So I'm grateful to be in a wheelchair, and I'm grateful for the life I have, and I'm grateful for the life that I've lived. I'm grateful for the life that I get to live. And life's just beginning. And I've just hit the half-century mark, in case anyone is, wondering. The gray beard is
giveaway. Yeah.
is more about the beard of wisdom. But I've learned that most of us, if not all of us, are paralyzed from the demons of doubt, fear, and complacency, which keeps us from climbing our mountains, which keeps us from getting up out of our chairs and chasing down our dreams, which keeps us from orchestrating and conducting the song that sings in our soul, that keeps us from weaving that tapestry of dream that's going to hang on somebody else's social media wall. And so as leaders of success and successful leaders, we've got to learn how to get people to the mountain. Not just to the mountain, but to the top of their mountain, to help them climb their mountain, to help them want to climb a mountain. And what I mean by mountain is dream. What is their dream that they want to climb? Because sometimes we create these small little dreams that are like the size of an anthill, and we're like, yes, I did it. And that's a good start. But what about those crazy dreams that you want to do? And when I got hurt after, as a collegiate football player, when I got hurt in between seasons, my identity and my dream of playing football on the big stage had been shattered, had been taken away. I'm in an identity crisis. I entered that sauna of self-pity that I talk about in my book. And so my dreams were taken, so then what do I do? Well, the obvious question is dream new dreams, but how do you get there? Especially if you've entered into that sauna of self-pity. Well, there's some things that can help us get out of there. Like flip the switch and just reframe things. Focus on what you can do instead of what you can't do. And unfortunately, most of us don't know what we want because we focus on what we don't want. And if we focus on what we don't want, we're going to continue to always get what we don't want. Where our focus goes, our energy flows. And so I moved to Ogden, and there's a mountain behind my house. And I'm like, you know what? I want to climb that. I want to climb that mountain. It's 9,711 feet. My wife jokes with me all the time. She's like, Jeff, you want to climb Mount Everest, but you won't put a cup in the sink.
Here's your wife.
And I'm like, hon, putting my cup in the sink isn't newsworthy. She's like, it is to me. And I need to do better at doing that. But I'm like, okay, awesome. And so I'm like, I want to do this. And so this was in 2019. I got hurt back in 1995, I believe, nearly 30 years ago. And I'm to the point where I can get up out of my chair and take a few steps. I can walk across the stage wherever I go and speak to let people know that, listen, you can get up out of your chair. It may be a long journey to get there. You may be able to, get to the other side of, the stage or whatever it is, that gap where you're at, if you're willing to do it and if you know where you want to go. And so I'm like, well, at this point, I'm able to, my legs are pretty strong. I can move them, I can lift them up, I can extend them. And I figured, I can climb that mountain. I don't know how long it will take me, but I can do it. So I told that dream to somebody in my neighborhood, in my community, and they're like, let's do it. So we recruited the young men in our neighborhood and to give them an experience, because what we did is we put together some parallel bars, portable parallel bars, that went around the neck of two people, and climbing all the way up to this mountain, we would need to rotate the people, and I would be in the middle, using them as support, but then I'd be walking all the way to the top of the mountain. And so we recruited the young men in the community, and then the older men wanted to be a part of it. Then their children wanted to be a part of it. So we had about 20 young kids and old men, ranging from that to get me to the top of this mountain. So this idea of, I love your podcast about leadership. Every great man and woman of history, I've learned and discovered, is a man of service. And so thank you for your service.
Amen.
Thank you for putting this together. Thank you for creating a place where we can come together and share about how we can be successful leaders and leaders of success, which are two different things.
Yeah.
And I can send you the link. Some guy who came with us had a little drone, was taking video and everything of it. We get to the top of this mountain, and I'm speaking to these young men and these older men, and we're talking about how do we climb our mountains? How do we accomplish our dreams? And so I was able to make it to the top of Mount Ben Lomond. On my book, there's a picture of Mount Everest, and that's where I was inspired, to do this, and inspired to put that on the front of my book. What people don't know is I got a D- in English in 6th grade. And what they don't know is when I got to high school, my English teacher told me I'd never write a comprehensive sentence in my life. And all that was validated my freshman year in college. When I showed up to class, we'd write the paragraph on day 1. Day 2, they called 6 of us out of 300 to the back of the room. I was one of the 6. I go bounding back to the back, and I'm like, what'd I win? They're like, you won a date with a remedial English teacher. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? And they're like, this is exactly why you need that. And so, again, I had all this programming and all this idea that I'm not an author, I'm not a writer, I can't do this. But after 2004, going to the Paralympics in Athens, Greece, I'm like, how did I get here? How did I become, a medalist on the USA men's wheelchair basketball team? How did I get married when the experts told me I'd never get married? Not because of my wheelchair, but just because of who I am. How did I have 2 kids at this point when that was the first function to go, last to come back? How do I get up out of my chair and take those steps? How did I become a 2-time Guinness World Record holder? How did I become a 4-time MVP of the All-Star event? How did I do all these things, and can other people duplicate it and do it as well? And so I wrote my book, and I wrote the book in 3 months, but it took me 10 years to get the confidence and to get over that programming to present it to the world. But in that process of 10 years, I didn't have an introduction that went with the mile markers inside the book. And it wasn't until 2006 that I went to Nepal, Kathmandu, Nepal, to do a humanitarian service. We were going to go there. We created a peer-to-peer leadership program that would help we would go and teach the peers there and give them some tools and skills to help them be productive citizens of societies, those who have been put in wheelchairs. And it dawned on me as I was flying into Kathmandu. It was the end of my 24-hour leg flight. I look out the window, and that small little 7-inch window, I could see Mount Everest in all her glory, just sitting above the clouds like a sentinel in that part of the world. And it just dawned on me, like, a lot of people come to this part of the world to climb Mount Everest. Mm-hmm. And that mountain for many, many years was deemed impossible to climb. Yep. And it wasn't until 2 people summited it to the top and came back down where all of a sudden this idea of it being impossible to climb to now be impossible. And what's amazing is if you have the right desire, the right amount of money, and you get there, chances are you're going to get to the top. One of my buddies who's an amputee, he's the first male American amputee to summit Mount Everest.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. And so, he was one of my teammates on the national team, and he summited it. There was an I think like an 86-year-old Japanese man who made it. There's a young 16-year-old kid who's made it. There's even a blind guy who has gotten to the top. Talk about seeing things a different way.
Yes.
And so this idea of how do we as leaders, successful leaders and leaders of success, get people to the top of their mountains? How do we get them to places where they've never been before? How do we get them to places that we haven't been before? And sometimes we need to admit that, okay, I know I'm a leader, I know I'm an influencer, I know I'm doing some things, but I don't know how to do this. And so how do I reach out to somebody who does know how to do that?
So you're networking. You're grabbing this to that and putting this all together.
It has to work that way. It has to work that way.
You talked about that story when you climbed the mountain. You had those 20 people. How important is support to leadership?
It's huge. When I went to 2004 Paralympic Games, we were the number one team going into the games, and we lost to the Dutch, the dirty Dutch. Those men from Amsterdam, they got us. They weren't even wearing their wooden shoes, but they beat us. They had never beat us before, but they beat us. And so the word that was going around the village was, USA is out, man. It's impossible for them to leave their pool as the number one team. Because we had the Germans next. The Germans beat the Dutch beat the Americans. If the Americans beat the Germans, then there's a three-way tie. And so we had to calculate it to find out what we had to beat the Germans by in order to come out as the number one team, because if there's a tie, it's aggregate scoring. So we figured out that we had to beat the Germans by more than 20 points. We played the Germans 3 times that year. We lost to them twice. The one time we beat them was only by single digits.
Wow.
So the evidence is, it's impossible for you guys to do this. But that game, I learned something about team. We went in there and we were just doing all sorts of things. We were putting in lineups, and we were pressing them, and we were only within like 2 points, 4 points, whatever points. We didn't start breaking it out until the last 2 minutes, and then we got up to 20 points, but we still had to beat them by 20 points. There's 8 seconds on the clock. Their best player's on the free throw line. He only has to hit the shot or just hold on to the ball, and they go out as the number one team. He misses the shot. We get the rebound, throw it full court to one of our teammates who's hiding out in the weeds, who grabs the ball, circles around, again, within 7 seconds. A German player flies by. He pump fakes, and then with 0.5 seconds left on the clock, he shoots the shot, and it's nothing but net.
My.
And so we beat the Germans by 22 points. We come out of the pool play as the number one team in the world, and we set ourselves up to go for that gold medal experience. But the reason I'm sharing this story with you is because I learned for myself that team really does mean together everyone achieves more. We can do a lot on our own, but we can't do as much as we possibly can unless we do it with the team. That's why it's so important to network. That's why it's so important to have a coach. That's why it's so important to ask for help.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You fell off that ladder, lost. Your love was going to be the NFL. We talked about that before. But you took that tragic event, and now you're playing wheelchair basketball, bringing that love to sports to you again, right?
Yeah.
Does it fill that bucket for you?
It's huge. I'm still playing. Each NBA team has a wheelchair team. We kick off the All-Star games with it. People are like, Griff, you're 50 years old. I'm like, yeah, well, replace my 25 points, and I'll get off the court. But what's even more beautiful is I've taken this love of sports and being able to play on the big stage and give high-level executive leaders a leadership experience that they've never, that's not out there. They can't do it. They come to us or we go to them, and we put them in wheelchairs, and we let them play wheelchair basketball, and then we start talking about how does that apply to leadership? How does that apply to our circumstance? How does that apply to us? And there's so many things that we can take from just that simple little activity of playing wheelchair basketball and then implementing it into the real world. How do we lead our team? How do we climb those mountains?
The mountain thing is so awesome, inspiring me. We're running out of time here. Mention your 2 books because I've read them. They're awesome.
Yeah, if you go to griffinmotivation.com, you can get my books. If you get both of them, free shipping.
Which I took advantage of.
If you put
We did it.
if you put in the coupon code LOVE, we'll knock off another 50%.
There you go.
And so you can't beat it. But there's some gold nuggets found in both those books that I believe if you implement and apply, you'll become a world record leader
I love it.
that will climb your own mountains.
Can I do something crazy for you?
Please.
Audience, the first 2 people that reach out to Jeff, Griff, I always want to be proper with you, but he's such a great guy, Griff, I'm going to send you a gift as well. So when you reach out to Griff, mention my name in the podcast. I want to reward you because you all need to reach out to him. You hear these stories. I just can't say anything because I'm so inspired. This podcast is about inspiration, motivation, and education. Griff hit every one of those with 100% or more. Thank you so much for being on the show. The second time, I'm blessed, truly blessed. Can you do one more favor for me?
Yes.
Can you tell my audience another awesome piece of advice through your incredible journey?
Yeah, this one is like so simple, but just don't quit. My message to the world is just don't quit. It seems so simple, but there's 2 messages in there. It's the capital DL, capital IT. Just do it. But Nike's already taken that, so just don't quit. But this idea of, we want success. We all want success, and I believe we've defined success wrong. And sometimes in order to find out what we want, we have to define what we don't want. And the opposite of success to most people is failure. But I've never met anyone who hasn't failed their way to success. So if you're listening to this and you're trying to chase down your dreams, trying to climb your mountains, just don't quit. Understand that, the opposite of success is to quit, to not even to try. And so, just don't quit. You got this.